Welcome to the West Ham Voice. This is the latest version of all the transfer news that's been hitting the headlines over the past few days. So it's a bit of a roundup. And there have been some updates related to the various transfer stories that have been surrounding West Ham already. The main headline, of course, is the one that we've kind of known about for some time. And that is, of course, that Mohammed Kudus will be resisting any attempt to sell him to any Saudi Pro League club. Now, whilst this would reap the greatest financial return for West Ham, it's not something that the player himself wants to relish. I think I mentioned this back in January when the rumours started to first surface that there was Saudi interest in the player. And back then, his stance was that he didn't want to go to the Saudi, and it's been maintained. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens because whilst the deal for the Saudi club from a Saudi club, would be great for West Ham United as well as life-changing for the 24-year-old Ghanaian, his football is far more important to him than money at this stage in his career. And that, in a way, is good to see. And even if he does leave West Ham United this summer, a move to a club that offers him Champions League football is something that I think he would much rather prefer than going for the money in Saudi. Look, he's 24 years of age. He'll have many years ahead of him to agree to a lucrative deal in Saudi Arabia in the future, maybe, in 3 years' time or something like that. He wants to win trophies. He wants to win some of the biggest trophies that football can provide. And clearly, the biggest trophies available are things like Champions League. But then, with him rejecting any proposal to go to a Saudi club, that inevitably means that all eyes will be on Premier League clubs bidding for Kudus. Because at this moment in time, we've yet to hear of any interest from clubs around Europe. So it's got to be the Premier League or nothing when it comes to Kudus wanting to play in a competition like the Champions League. Now, the two and now three clubs that are constantly being rumoured or linked to him include Liverpool, Arsenal, and now Newcastle United. And when it comes to links with Liverpool and Arsenal, both clubs they definitely already have established players who play in Mohammed Kudus's favoured position, and that's on the right side of attacking midfield. Of course, Mohamed Salah, who had a new deal agreed with Liverpool only recently, and of course, Arsenal, Bukayo Saka. And with Liverpool already making something like 110, 115 million pound bid for Leverkusen's Florian Wirtz, it looks as if their focus on strengthening their squad could be lying elsewhere. But Liverpool have got money to spend. They didn't spend a lot last summer. And they may want to strengthen their squad even more by signing not only Wirtz, but maybe Kudus as well, as do Arsenal. They've got money to spend too. And they would be looking to have more strength in depth in order to go for the league and, of course, for Champions League next season. But then that throws up the conundrum. Would Kudus be happy to be a squad player at a club like Arsenal or Liverpool? Or would he agree to go to a club like that, one of those clubs, kind of knowing that he may not necessarily play in his favoured position on the right? Now, I would hazard a guess that the answer to both those questions is no. At West Ham, we've already seen for ourselves just how uncomfortable and unhappy Kudus looks when he's asked to play in other positions. On his day, we know he's most certainly one of our best players, although his form this season has not demonstrated that. But we know he's got the ability to be a great player, and he will want to prove himself at a bigger team. And he would want to be one of the players, not just another player in the squad. So that might almost definitely for him maybe exclude Liverpool and Arsenal in the running to sign him. But if they do not want to sign him, they're unlikely to want to be able to, but if they do want to sign him, they may not want to offer the sort of money that we would be looking for. Look, one thing's for sure is that we should not be selling Mohammed Kudus on the cheap, regardless of the poor season that he's had. Look, we know there's a clause in his contract for around 85 billion pounds, and we also know that we're hardly likely to get that. But in all honesty, we should be looking for at least 70 million or more for the player. Is that too much to ask for a 24-year-old who's got plenty of offer, who's got 2 seasons under his belt in the Premier League as well? I think that's about the right price for him. So if neither Arsenal nor Liverpool will end up signing him, either because they're looking elsewhere to strengthen their squad, or they may not be able to offer him the position that he favours, would Newcastle go in for him for that sort of money? You're beginning to then wonder, are there actually going to be any Premier League clubs that are actually going to be in the running to sign Kudus? A, for the right money, and B, for wanting to give the player the platform that he wants, playing on the right, being one of the players rather than a squad player. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. But let's say we do sell him. Let's say we do get 70 odd million for him. What would we do with that money? Now, Potter has already made it clear that he plans on reducing the size of the squad as well as the average age of the squad. That's his aim. And with up to 8 players already leaving the club, those whose contracts have ended or about to end, and if we sell Kudus, then that would be 9 players already out the door, more or less before the transfer window has started. Now, I'm sure you've all got priorities as to where you think the squad needs to be strengthened. For me, the priorities have got to be at least 1, if not 2 centre-backs, a versatile fullback, someone who can play on the left and on the right side of defence, and at the very least 2 midfielders, and at the very least a striker. So we're talking at least 1, 2, 3, 5 players minimum. Plus, we know we've got Crescencio Somerville returning from injury. And there will also be an opportunity for some of the academy players like Freddie Potts, George Earthy, Callum Marshall and Lewis Orford to impress in the pre-season. And if that all works out, Somerville coming back and maybe want more than a couple of the academy players showing their worth, then Potter could well find himself with a good number of players are available to him that are not currently available. That might make it easier in the transfer market rather than trying to go out and buy maybe 8, 9, 10 players. If we can get at least 1 or 2 from the academy plus Somerville coming back, that would help, wouldn't it? But in all honesty, I think the only academy player that's likely to really make it next season is Freddie Potts. He's the one that I think stands a very good chance of being in the first team squad next season. So what about the 70, 75 million we could get for Kudus? Well, according to reports on Friday, we've already made a bid, a formal approach, should I say, a formal approach for defensive midfielder Raphael Onyedika of Club Brugge. He was one of a number of players I talked about in the transfer videos that I did on Wednesday. Now, we're apparently keen on making a bid for the 24-year-old. It is suggested value the player at something like 24 million euros. That's about 22 million pounds. But West Ham might not want to make a bid that high and might want to seek to go as far as maybe 20 million euros, about 17 million pounds. Now, look, in all honesty, the valuations between what the club think he's worth and what we might want to pay for him are not that far away. And maybe the club could do a deal where there'll be a basic fee plus add-ons to bring it up to the 24 million euros that Club Brugge want. However, having experience playing in the Champions League, would Onyedika fancy a move to West Ham? Look, as far as domestic football is concerned, he would certainly be taking a big step up. No disrespect to the Belgian league, but the Premier League is a step up from that. So certainly on a domestic level, he'll be taking a step up. But with so many teams offering some kind of European football from the Premier League next season, might he prefer a move to a club that's offering that? It's going to be interesting to see what happens. But apparently we've formalised our interest in the player and we're looking to make a bid for him. Look, although he's primarily a defensive midfielder, he has been known to also play in central defence as well, which could bode well for West Ham. The Nigerian international has been with Club Brugge for 3 years and still has 2 years left on his remaining contract. So for the Belgian club, this could actually be the right time to cash in on him. So that would be around a third of the money that we might get for Kudus, spending that on the defensive midfielder. Now, we're also aware that, as mentioned again on Wednesday, teenager Daniel Cummings will complete his move to West Ham when his contract expires at Celtic at the end of June. But the best that Celtic could expect in compensation would be something like about £300,000. So it would barely have any impact or significance on any Kudus money that we would get if we were to sell Mohammed Kudus. But there are still conflicting stories whether we're going to play Cummings in the senior team or the development team. Well, I guess this summer's pre-season will help us determine what level of football he'll be playing next season. Another player apparently back on West Ham's radar is OGC Nice striker, Evann Guessand. Now, it was thought that Guessand would be making his way to Brighton after it was revealed that Chelsea were interested in signing João Pedro. Now, however, that now looks unlikely because Chelsea, as we know, have now made a move. Liam Delap. Now, if Delap goes to Chelsea, that may mean that Brighton's plan to sell the striker. Sorry about that. I think the screen froze. So if Chelsea go for Delap, that means that Brighton's plans to sell the Brazilian striker to Chelsea looks like it may be off, which means quite possibly they may not be able to make a move for Guessand. So here's a chance that West Ham might take advantage of. And if they make a bid for the 23-year-old Ivory Coast international, then that might be our gain. However, there is apparent interest from also the likes of Newcastle, Aston Villa and Arsenal. Guessand has had a decent season at the French club, scoring 13 goals and assisting in 10 in all competitions last season. Again, he's another versatile player who can play either on the wings, on both sides of the wings, or up front. And it's believed that he's got the technical ability and the strength to adapt to Premier League football. At 25-30 million pounds, Guessand could be a deal worth doing for West Ham United. So with Onyedika and Guessand, that would be around about 50-55 million pounds spent on two players from the sale of Kudus, leaving around 20 million pounds for other targets. All right, what about some other transfer stories? Let's bring you up to date. Apparently, we still have an interest in Brøndby's under-21 Danish international striker, Mathias Kidsgarden. Apparently, he's one of our options. Look, this one is likely to be a low-risk option in terms of cost because he's valued at something like 8 million euros. He scored 23 goals with 7 assists for Brøndby this season. And if we're targeting more than one striker, then Kidsgarden may well be a really astute backup. A complete left field story that came up earlier today, on Friday, is that we're possibly looking at League One striker Richard Kone from Wycombe Wanderers. Now, we have an excellent relationship with Wycombe, having loaned several of our players to the club over the past few years. Kone has had an excellent season, scoring 21 goals for the club, and he's only 21 years of age, and many are suggesting that he's got a bright future ahead of him. But again, it'll be more of a backup striker, just like Kidsgarden, low cost, even lower cost, because he would be valued at around £500,000, give or take. But haven't we got our own player who did exceptionally well in League One last season? And that, of course, is Callum Marshall. Granted, he only scored half the goals that Kone scored, but he's shown to be a good prospect nonetheless. But also, with Cummings coming from Celtic, does targeting a backup striker option further suggest that Cummings may not be destined for the senior squad next season. Perhaps with Kone or Kone, I don't know how you pronounce it. I'm going with Kone. We may well do what we're planning with Marshall, and that's if we buy him, we could loan him out to a championship club to see how he can deliver at a higher level. Next story is that Newcastle and West Ham are apparently interested in Fenerbahce left back Jadon Osterwolde. Now, yet again, we were linked to him last summer. He started the season well in Turkey, but he sustained a cruciate ligament tear, which ended his season early. He's on the road to recovery. I don't know about this. I know we're looking potentially at a replacement for Aaron Cresswell, but I'm not sure there's much mileage into this story because we were linked to him when Lopetegui was here. We're linked to him again. I'm not so sure. And finally, we've got to say a very best of luck to academy player Kamari Swire. He left West Ham and has joined Kevin Nolan's Northampton Town in League Two on a 2-year deal. Nolan's team just avoided relegation, looking for a player like Swire to really hit the ground running and scoring the goals to elevate the club further up the league. Nolan knows Swire when he was first team coach at West Ham under David Moyes. So we wish him the best of luck. That's the roundup for now. I'm sure there's going to be many other stories coming up, but I am off on a very short trip over the weekend with Wiggy and Paul. We're going on our own European tour. We might do a little video while we're out there. So thank you for watching and listening. If you're new to the channel, please become a subscriber of the channel. But tell me what you think about these latest stories. What about Kudus? Is there a Premier League team that's going to come in to buy him? Or maybe we might end up keeping him. Who knows? Thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you all soon.